Captain Zethkar stood on the bridge of the Harmonious Inquiry, his scaled hands gripping the command rail. The massive Saurian's yellow eyes focused on the twisted metal floating in space ahead of them. The wreckage had once been a ship, but now it looked like someone had crushed it like an empty food container. "What do we know about this vessel?" Zethkar asked his crew. Lieutenant Vex, a smaller Saurian with bright green scales, checked his scanner. "It appears to be human in origin, Captain. The design matches their transport ships, but something is wrong with the readings." Zethkar's head tilted slightly. Humans were still new to this part of space. Most Council species found them strange and unpredictable. They fought wars over things that made no sense to logical minds. They formed emotional bonds that interfered with clear thinking. But they also built impressive ships and had dangerous weapons. "Wrong how?" the captain asked. "There are life signs, sir. Faint ones, coming from what looks like a cargo hold that somehow survived the destruction." Dr. Velness approached from her station near the back of the bridge. The mantis-like Zephoid scientist was tall and thin, with large compound eyes that could see many different types of light. Her forearms moved gracefully as she spoke. "Captain, if there are survivors, we should help them immediately," she said. Her voice sounded like music through the ship's translation system. Zethkar considered this. The Galactic Council had rules about helping ships in distress. But they also had rules about unknown threats. Humans had been involved in several conflicts recently. Some council members thought they were too aggressive to be trusted. "We will investigate carefully," he decided. "Vex, scan for weapons or dangers. Velness, prepare a medical team. But everyone stays alert." The Harmonious Inquiry moved closer to the wreckage. The ship's powerful lights revealed the damage more clearly. Whatever had destroyed the human vessel had been thorough. Most of the ship was gone, scattered in pieces across space. Only a small section remained intact. "I'm reading the cargo hold more clearly now," Vex reported. "There are definitely life forms inside, but the readings are strange. Their stress chemicals are very high, even though they appear to be unconscious." Dr. Velness studied her own instruments. "They're in some kind of sleep chambers. Cryogenic pods, I think. But the design is unusual. There are restraint systems and monitoring equipment that seem excessive." Zethkar's eyes narrowed. "Restraints? Are these prisoners?" "It's possible, sir. The humans might have been transporting dangerous criminals." The captain made his decision. "We'll bring them aboard for questioning. If they're criminals, the council will want to study them. If they're innocent, we'll help them. Either way, we need to know what happened here." The salvage operation took 2 hours. The cargo hold was carefully cut free from the wreckage and brought into the Harmonious Inquiry's main bay. When the doors opened, the rescue team found something that confused them all. Inside the hold were 12 cryogenic pods. Each one contained a human, but these humans were much smaller than the adults they had seen in council records. Some were very small indeed. "Children," Dr. Velness whispered. "These are human children." Zethkar stared at the pods. He had never seen human young before. In Saurian culture, the newly hatched were left to survive on their own. The strong lived, the weak died, and this made the species stronger. These humans looked weak and helpless. Why would anyone transport children in restraint pods? Asked Lieutenant Vex, Dr. Velness examined the equipment more closely. "Look at these monitors. They're not just keeping the children alive. They're measuring stress responses, brain activity, fear hormones. This isn't a rescue system. It's an experiment setup." The implications troubled the medical team. Someone had been using these children for research. But who and why? "Sir," called out Technician Grex, a small, furry creature with excellent hearing. "I'm detecting a distress beacon in the wreckage. It's very faint, but it's still transmitting. Can you decode it?" "Working on it now, got it." The message is short. "Plague ship refuge requesting emergency assistance. Medical evacuation in progress. Children are clean, repeat, children are clean. Please help them." Dr. Velness looked up from her examination of the pods. "Captain, I don't think these children were prisoners. I think they were refugees. Someone was trying to save them from a disease outbreak." Zethkar processed this information. If the children were refugees, then whoever had put them in restraint pods and attached monitoring equipment had taken them prisoner after their rescue ship was destroyed. But the ship's logs were destroyed with most of the vessel. "We can't know for certain what happened," he said finally, "but we know these are human children in distress. Council protocols are clear. We take them to Research Station Omega-7 for proper evaluation. Dr. Wellness felt uncomfortable with this decision. Sir, shouldn't we try to contact human authorities? Their families might be looking for them. These children were found in experimental equipment, Zethkar replied. Until we understand what was being done to them and why, they represent a potential security risk. The research station has the facilities to study them safely. The captain's logic was sound by Saurian standards. Unknown factors required careful study. Emotional responses interfered with clear thinking. But Dr. Wellness came from a species that raised their young in community groups. The idea of studying frightened children instead of comforting them felt wrong. As the medical team prepared to transfer the pods to the research station, Dr. Wellness noticed something else about the monitoring equipment. The stress readings were extremely high, even for unconscious subjects. Whatever these children had experienced before being frozen had terrified them deeply. She also noticed that the oldest child, a male who appeared to be in his mid-teens, had somehow damaged his restraints. The marks suggested he had tried to free himself and reach the smaller children before the cryogenic process took effect. "Captain," she said quietly, "I think these children have already been through something traumatic. Perhaps we should consider—" "Doctor," Zethkar interrupted, "your emotional responses are noted, but we will follow proper procedures. The research station will determine the best course of action based on facts, not feelings." The harmonious inquiry changed course for Research Station Omega-7. In the medical bay, 12 human children slept in their pods, unaware that their rescue had led to a new captivity. Their stress readings remained high, as if some part of their minds knew they were still in danger. Dr. Wellness stayed with them during the journey, monitoring their vital signs and studying their faces. She had never seen human children before, but something about their features reminded her of her own species' young. There was a vulnerability there that made her protective instincts activate. She didn't understand yet that she was seeing something that would soon terrify the entire Galactic Council. These weren't just small humans. They were something that humanity would kill and die to protect. And somewhere in human space, people were already looking for them. The research station grew larger in the view screen as they approached. Dr. Wellness made a decision that would prove important later. She secretly copied all the medical readings and pod data to her personal files. If these children needed an advocate, she would be prepared to help them. She had no way of knowing that her small act of rebellion would soon be the only thing standing between the galaxy and a war unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Research Station Omega-7 floated in the darkness between stars like a giant metal flower. Its many arms held laboratories, living quarters, and containment facilities for studying dangerous specimens from across the galaxy. When the harmonious inquiry arrived, the station's staff was already preparing for their unusual new subjects. Dr. Eichson, the station's chief researcher, met them at the docking bay. The elderly crystalline being's body sparkled with different colors as he communicated through light patterns. His species had no concept of childhood as other races understood it. They simply grew larger until they achieved consciousness. Fascinating specimens. Dr. Eichson's lights pulsed in scientific excitement. Human juveniles are rarely available for study. We must learn everything we can about their development patterns. Dr. Wellness felt her protective instincts flare again. "Sir, these children have been through trauma. They need medical care and comfort, not experimentation." Emotional thinking. Dr. Eichson's lights dimmed with disapproval. "We will follow proper research protocols. The children will be safe and well-fed while we observe their behavior patterns." The children were moved to Containment Level 5, which usually housed dangerous predators from unexplored worlds. Each cell was clean and sterile, with transparent aluminum walls that allowed constant observation. The cells had basic sleeping platforms, food dispensers, and waste facilities, but nothing else. When the children were awakened from their cryogenic sleep, their confusion and fear immediately spiked the monitoring equipment. The youngest, a girl who appeared to be about 8 years old, began crying immediately. The sound echoed through the observation chamber where the research team watched. "Interesting," noted Dr. Corinth, a spider-like arachnoid researcher. "The small one produces distress sounds. This must be a communication method to summon adult protection." "But there are no adults here," observed Dr. Eichson. "How will they adapt their behavior when their instinctive responses fail?" Dr. Wellness watched through the one-way barriers as the children gradually understood their situation. The oldest boy, Marcus, moved from cell to cell, pressing his hands against the transparent walls and speaking to the younger ones. His voice was calm, but she could see the fear in his eyes. "He's trying to comfort them," she said softly. "Curious leadership behavior," Dr. Corinth agreed. "Mark this for further study. We should test how far this protective instinct extends." Over the following days, the research team implemented various experiments. They separated the children into different groups to see how they responded to isolation. They introduced mild stress factors like temperature changes and loud noises to measure their coping mechanisms. They provided puzzles and challenges to test their problem-solving abilities. The children's responses confused the researchers. Instead of competing with each other for resources as most species would, they shared everything equally. When food was limited, the older ones gave their portions to the younger ones. When the temperature dropped, they huddled together for warmth even though the transparent walls prevented physical contact. "This cooperation behavior is inefficient," Dr. Eichson noted. "The strongest should take resources to ensure their survival. Why do they waste energy protecting the weak?" Marcus, the 16-year-old, had become the clear leader of the group. He spent his time moving between the cells, checking on each child, telling stories to keep them calm, and trying to communicate with their captors. His attempts to reach the researchers grew more desperate each day. "Please," he called out during one observation session, pressing his face against the transparent wall. "I know you're watching us. These little ones need their families. They need their parents. Just tell us what you want." The researchers found his emotional displays fascinating but illogical. Dr. Corinth made detailed notes about human stress responses. Dr. Eichson measured their hormone levels during different types of distress. Dr. Wellness tried to argue for better treatment, but she was overruled by the senior staff. "We're not hurting them," Dr. Eichson pointed out. "They have food, water, shelter, and medical monitoring. Many species would consider this luxury, but they're terrified," Dr. Wellness protested. "Look at their stress readings. Some of the younger ones have stopped eating." "Temporary adjustment difficulties," Dr. Corinth dismissed. "They will adapt or they won't. Either result provides valuable data." On the 5th day, Administrator Quillen arrived from the Galactic Council headquarters. The ethereal being existed as a cloud of glowing gas contained within a portable atmosphere unit. His species reproduced by merging consciousness with others, creating new individuals through shared thought rather than physical processes. "I've reviewed your preliminary reports." Administrator Quillen's voice emerged from speakers in his containment unit. "The behavioral data is remarkable. These humans show completely irrational survival strategies. This could explain their recent aggressive actions in border territories. The juveniles demonstrate extreme group loyalty," Dr. Eichson reported. "Even when resources are limited, they prioritize group survival over individual advantage. This suggests their adult military behavior might be instinctive rather than strategic." Administrator Quillen pulsed with interest. "Excellent. Continue the research. I'm authorizing extended observation periods. We need to understand these creatures before they become a larger threat to council space." Dr. Wellness watched the children through the observation window as the administrators discussed extending their captivity. Marcus was leading the younger ones in what appeared to be some kind of group activity. They sat in circles in their separate cells, moving their hands in synchronized patterns while Marcus sang in their human language. She accessed the translation system and realized he was teaching them a song from their homeworld. The lyrics spoke of families, safety, and hope. Despite their terror and isolation, he was trying to maintain their connection to their culture and keep their spirits alive. The youngest girl had stopped crying but hadn't spoken since the first day. She sat curled in the corner of her cell, watching Marcus with wide eyes whenever he sang. Dr. Wellness noticed that the child's stress readings dropped significantly during these singing sessions. "They're not adapting to captivity," she told Dr. Eichson after reviewing the latest medical data. "They're finding ways to resist psychological breakdown. This Marcus individual is actively working to preserve their mental health." "Fascinating." Dr. Eichson's light sparkled. "A natural leadership emergence under stress conditions. We should test the limits of this behavior. What happens if we remove the leader? How do the others respond to increased isolation?" Dr. Wellness felt something cold form in her stomach. You want to separate Marcus from the group? For scientific purposes, yes. Understanding their hierarchy breakdown could provide crucial data about human social structures. That night, Dr. Velness made another decision that would prove crucial. She accessed the station's communication array and sent a message toward human space. She didn't identify herself or reveal the location of the research station. She simply transmitted the children's biometric data and a single word: help. She had no way of knowing that her message would reach a human colonial ship whose crew had been searching desperately for these exact children. She also didn't know that her message would trigger a response that would terrify the entire Galactic Council. In their cells, the children slept fitfully under the constant observation lights. Marcus lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to think of ways to protect his young companions from whatever their captors planned next. He didn't know that help was already on the way, or that his attempts to shield the younger children from trauma had been recorded and transmitted across the galaxy. The research continued, and the administrators made plans for expanded experiments. None of them understood that they had crossed a line that would fundamentally change the relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the communications room of the New Horizon, staring at the message that had changed everything. The colonial ship had been searching for the refugee transport refuge for 3 weeks. Now they finally had a lead, but it wasn't what anyone had expected. "You're certain this signal came from the wreckage coordinates?" she asked her communications officer. Lieutenant Park nodded grimly. "Yes, ma'am. The transmission was weak, but the biometric data matches our missing children perfectly. All 12 of them are alive." Captain Chen felt relief and anger fighting in her chest. The children were alive, but someone had them. Someone had been studying them like laboratory animals. The brief message from Dr. Velness hadn't explained much, but it had included enough data to make the situation clear. "Ma'am," called out Navigator Williams from his station, "I've plotted a course to those coordinates. We can be there in 18 hours if we push the engines." "Do it," Captain Chen ordered, "and send a message to Colonial Command. Tell them we found the children, but we're going to need backup." The New Horizon wasn't a warship. It was a colony transport vessel carrying 3,000 civilians to their new home. But every person on board had volunteered to help search for the missing children. When word spread about the discovery, the entire ship buzzed with activity. In the refugee quarters, the children's families gathered around Captain Chen as she explained what they had learned. Maria Santos, whose 8-year-old daughter Elena was among the captives, gripped her husband's hand tightly. "Are they hurt?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The medical data suggests they're physically healthy," Captain Chen replied carefully. "But they're being held in some kind of research facility. We're going to get them back." The families had already been through hell. The plague outbreak on their home colony had killed thousands before the evacuation began. These children had been placed on the refuge because they were confirmed clean, meant to be the first wave of refugees to reach safety. Instead, they had become prisoners. When the New Horizon reached Research Station Omega-7, Captain Chen was surprised by what she found. The station was enormous and clearly designed for scientific research. It wasn't a military facility or a pirate base. It belonged to the Galactic Council. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the colonial vessel New Horizon," she transmitted to the station. "You are holding 12 human children taken from the wreckage of the transport ship Refuge. I demand their immediate release." The response came from Administrator Quiln. "Captain Chen, this is Research Station Omega-7 of the Galactic Council. The specimens in question are part of an ongoing scientific study authorized under Council Regulation 847 Alpha. If you wish to discuss their status, you may file a formal request through diplomatic channels." Captain Chen felt her jaw clench. "Specimens? These are children. Innocent children whose families are desperately worried about them. The subjects are being well cared for," Administrator Quiln replied. "They are provided with food, shelter, and medical monitoring. The research being conducted will benefit all Council species by improving our understanding of human behavioral patterns." "You don't understand," Captain Chen said, her voice getting harder. "These children were refugees fleeing a plague. They're not criminals or volunteers. They're scared kids who need their families. Your emotional attachment to these juveniles is noted." Dr. Ikeson's crystalline voice joined the conversation. "However, the scientific value of this research outweighs temporary discomfort. The subjects will be returned when our studies are complete. Captain Chen looked around her bridge. Her crew was staring at her with expressions of barely controlled fury. The families of the children had crowded into the bridge area and were listening to every word. "How long?" she asked. "Several months at minimum," Administrator Quillen responded. "Possibly longer if we discover particularly interesting behavioral patterns." The bridge fell silent. Captain Chen felt something cold and dangerous settling in her stomach. These aliens thought they could keep human children for months of experimentation. They thought they could treat kids like laboratory animals and justify it with scientific curiosity. "I'm going to give you one chance to reconsider," she said slowly. "Return those children to us now and we'll discuss compensation for any inconvenience. Refuse and I'll make sure every human settlement in this sector knows what you've done." "Are you threatening the Galactic Council?" Administrator Quillen asked, his tone suggesting amusement. "I'm making you a promise," Captain Chen replied. Dr. Velness had been listening to the conversation from her laboratory. Something about the human captain's tone made her nervous. She had studied enough species to recognize when predators were preparing to attack. Captain Chen's voice carried that same deadly calm. Against regulations, Dr. Velness activated a private channel to the human ship. "Captain Chen, this is Dr. Velness of the research station. I sent the message that led you here. The children are being held in containment cells designed for dangerous animals. They're terrified but unharmed." "Thank you," Captain Chen replied. "Can you show me their condition?" Dr. Velness hesitated, then transmitted the surveillance footage from the children's cells. Captain Chen watched Marcus trying to comfort the younger children through the transparent walls. She saw Elena Santos curled up in the corner of her cell, no longer crying but clearly traumatized. She saw the other children sharing their meager food rations and huddling together for warmth. When the transmission ended, Captain Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was completely different. The diplomatic tone was gone, replaced by something that made Dr. Velness's protective instincts scream warnings. "Administrator Quillen," Captain Chen said, "you have 30 minutes to transfer those children to our ship. After that, this becomes a different kind of conversation." "Your threats are meaningless," Administrator Quillen responded. "This station is under Council protection. Your colonial vessel poses no threat to our operations." Dr. Velness watched Captain Chen's face on her screen. The human woman was smiling, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a predator that had decided to stop pretending to be harmless. "You misunderstand," Captain Chen said. "I'm not threatening your station. I'm explaining what's about to happen to every council facility, trade route, and diplomatic outpost in human space. You see, Administrator, you made a mistake. You hurt our children, and now every human settlement is going to know exactly who you are and what you've done." The transmission cut off. Dr. Velness immediately tried to contact Captain Chen again, but the human ship had gone silent. On her instruments, she could see the New Horizon backing away from the station. "What are they doing?" Dr. Eichson asked when the research staff gathered in the observation center. Dr. Velness checked her sensors. "They're transmitting something. A broad-spectrum signal being sent toward human space." The message was simple but devastating. Captain Chen was broadcasting the surveillance footage of the children, along with the coordinates of the research station and a detailed explanation of what the council was doing. The transmission was being relayed by every human vessel and communication array it reached. Within hours, the message had spread across dozens of human colonies and military outposts. Dr. Velness watched the communication traffic in growing alarm. She had studied enough human history to recognize the pattern that was emerging. "Administrator Quillen," she called over the station's communication system, "I think we need to reconsider our position. The human response appears to be escalating rapidly." "Impossible," Administrator Quillen replied. "They're a minor species with limited resources. What can they possibly do against Council authority?" Dr. Velness pulled up the data streams coming from human space. Military vessels were changing course throughout the sector. Civilian ships were being converted for combat. Trade convoys were being redirected to form blockades. Most disturbing of all, human colonies were emptying as volunteers signed up for emergency military service. "Sir," she said quietly, "I don't think they're planning to attack the station. I think they're planning to attack everything we have." In the containment cells, Marcus was telling the younger children another story when the station's lights flickered. Something was happening outside, but they had no way of knowing what. He just hoped that whatever it was, someone was finally coming to help them. He had no idea that his suffering, broadcast across human space, was about to trigger the largest military mobilization in human history. Dr. Wellness stood in the research station's main communications center, watching data streams that made her compound eyes ache with disbelief. In the 6 hours since Captain Chen had broadcast the surveillance footage, human space had transformed into something that defied every council assumption about their species. Show me those military movement reports. Again, she requested from the analysis computer. The holographic display filled with red indicators showing human fleet positions. What she saw was impossible by any logical measure. Entire star systems were emptying their populations to join military convoys. Merchant vessels were being retrofitted with weapons. Civilian transports were loading soldiers and supplies. This doesn't make sense. Dr. Ikeson's crystalline form sparkled with confusion. Our intelligence reports indicated humans have approximately 200 military vessels in this sector. Current readings show over 1,500 ships moving toward council space. Dr. Wellness studied the tactical display more carefully. They're not all military ships. Most of these are civilian vessels that have been converted. Look at this one. It's a farming transport that's been fitted with missile pods. This one here used to be a pleasure cruise ship. Administrator Quiln floated into the communications center, his gaseous form pulsing with irritation. This is clearly a bluff designed to pressure us into releasing the research subjects. No species would mobilize their entire civilian population over 12 juveniles. Sir, Dr. Wellness said carefully, I've been reviewing human historical records. I think we need to understand something important about their species. She activated the main display and pulled up files from the Council's xenological database. Look at this pattern from their homeworld history. Every time their children were threatened, humans responded with total warfare. Not just military action, complete societal mobilization. The display showed conflicts from Earth's past, the Crusades, triggered partly by reports of children being harmed, World War II's Pacific Theater escalation after attacks on civilians including children, the systematic destruction of regimes that institutionalized child abuse. These are ancient conflicts, Dr. Ikeson dismissed. Primitive behavior from their pre-spaceflight period. No, sir. Look at this more recent data. Dr. Wellness highlighted incidents from human colonial expansion. 3 years ago, pirates captured a school transport in the Kepler system. The human response was to hunt down every pirate base within 50 light years. They didn't stop until the entire organization was eliminated. That was different, Administrator Quiln argued. Those were criminals. We are legitimate researchers conducting authorized studies. Dr. Wellness felt her protective instincts screaming at her. She pulled up the surveillance footage of Marcus comforting the younger children and played it on the main screen. Administrator, I don't think humans see the difference. To them, anyone who hurts their children is a threat that must be eliminated. Captain Chen's voice suddenly filled the communications center as an incoming transmission activated. Research Station Omega-7, this is the New Horizon. I'm transmitting some historical data that might help you understand your situation. The transmission contained audio recordings from Earth's past. Dr. Wellness listened in, growing horror as human voices, described what they had done to protect their children. A mother talking about killing an entire pack of predators that threatened her young. A father explaining why he had burned down a building where children were being abused. Military commanders discussing the complete destruction of enemy forces that had targeted civilian populations. These recordings demonstrate a consistent pattern. Captain Chen's voice continued. When human children are threatened, our species responds with what we call protective fury. It's not a rational response. It's biological, evolutionary. We can't control it any more than you can control breathing. Dr. Wellness translated this concept into terms her colleagues might understand. Captain Chen, are you saying that your response to our research is instinctive? Dr. Wellness, thank you for sending us the message about the children. Yes, our response is instinctive. When we see footage of our young being caged and experimented on, every human within 100 light years becomes a potential soldier. We don't choose this reaction. It chooses us. The display updated with new movement reports. More human fleets were joining the convergence on Council space. Supply lines were being established. Defensive positions were being abandoned as every available ship moved toward potential combat zones. This is insane. Dr. Ikeson's lights flashed with disbelief. They're leaving their colonies defenseless for the sake of 12 individuals. You still don't understand, Captain Chen replied. Those aren't just 12 individuals to us. They're the future of our species. Every human child represents the survival of humanity itself. When you cage them and study them like animals, you're attacking our biological imperative to continue existing. Dr. Wellness accessed deeper files in the human database. What she found made her legs tremble with fear. Human evolutionary history showed a species that had fought off predators, natural disasters, and extinction events through one primary adaptation, an absolute commitment to protecting their offspring. Administrator, she said quietly, I'm reading about something called kin selection theory. Humans evolved to sacrifice themselves for their children because children carry the genetic future of the group. This isn't just emotional bonding, it's evolutionary programming. The communication system activated again. This time the voice belonged to Admiral Torres of the Human Defense Force. Research Station Omega-7. This is Admiral Torres commanding the Emergency Response Fleet. You are holding 12 human children in conditions that our species considers torture. I'm giving you one final opportunity to release them unharmed. Administrator Quillen pulsed with what Dr. Wellness recognized as stubborn pride. Admiral Torres, these subjects are part of a legitimate scientific study approved by the Galactic Council. We will not be intimidated by threats from a minor species. Admiral, Dr. Wellness interrupted desperately. This is Dr. Wellness, a researcher on this station. I've been studying your species' historical patterns. How many humans are currently moving toward Council space? Current mobilization shows approximately 47,000 vessels, Dr. Wellness. Mostly civilian ships converted for combat. We estimate about 2 million human volunteers are currently en route to this sector. The communications center fell silent. 2 million humans. That was more than the total population of most council member worlds. Admiral Torres, Dr. Wellness asked, her voice barely functioning. What happens if we release the children now? If they're returned unharmed, we'll discuss reparations and new protocols for protecting human young. If they're harmed, the Admiral's voice trailed off. If they're harmed, Administrator Quillen prompted. If they're harmed, Dr. Wellness, then you'll learn why every predator species in Earth's ecosystem learned to fear human parents. We'll show you what happens when someone threatens our evolutionary future. Dr. Wellness pulled up tactical analyses of human military capabilities. What she saw terrified her. Humans fought with a combination of advanced technology and desperate fury that had already pushed back 3 different aggressive species. But those had been military conflicts with strategic objectives. This was different. This was millions of humans acting on biological programming that overrode rational thinking. They weren't coming to negotiate or establish territory. They were coming to eliminate a threat to their children. Administrator Quillen, she said urgently, I recommend immediate release of the human subjects. Our research data isn't worth starting a war that could destroy both our species. Impossible, Quillen replied. The Council will not bow to threats from primitives. Dr. Wellness looked at the tactical display showing human fleets converging from dozens of star systems. She thought about Marcus trying to protect the younger children despite his own terror. She thought about human parents who would burn down the galaxy to save their young. Sir, she said quietly, I don't think they're primitives. I think they're the most dangerous species we've ever encountered, and we just threatened the one thing they'll kill to protect. In the containment cells, the children slept uneasily under the constant observation lights. They had no idea that their suffering had mobilized an entire species, or that their rescue was racing toward them across the void of space. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the Great Chamber on Central Station as reports flooded in from across Council space. Representatives from 47 member species filled the amphitheater, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors, shapes, and energy patterns. Chancellor Vorth, the ancient leader of the Council, activated the central holographic display. The 3-dimensional map showed human fleets moving through space like a slow-motion explosion. Red indicators marked converted civilian vessels. Blue showed military ships. Green represented supply convoys. The entire display was dominated by movement toward Council territories. In 72 hours, Chancellor Vorth announced, humanity has mobilized more resources than most of our member species possess in total. This is unprecedented in galactic history. Dr. Wellness stood at the testimony platform, her forearms trembling as she addressed the assembled representatives. She had been transported from Research Station Omega-7 to provide first-hand testimony about the crisis. "Honored representatives," she began, "I have studied the humans involved in this situation. I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood the nature of their species." The holographic display changed to show the surveillance footage of the children in their containment cells. The chamber fell silent as representatives watched Marcus comforting the younger children, sharing food, telling stories, and maintaining hope despite their captivity. "We classified these subjects as research specimens," Dr. Wellness continued, "but to humans they represent something we never considered. They are not just individuals, they are the embodiment of their species' survival instinct." Representative Cloth of the warrior scorpion race leaned forward. "You're suggesting that humans view their young differently than other species?" "More than differently," Dr. Wellness replied. "Humans evolved as a predator species, but unlike most predators, they developed extreme protective behaviors toward their offspring. While most species balance survival between individuals and groups, humans will sacrifice everything for their children." She activated a new display showing human historical data. Every major human military mobilization has involved threats to their young. When children are endangered, humans don't calculate costs or benefits. They react with what they call protective fury, a biological response that overrides rational thinking. Chancellor Vorth studied the tactical displays. "Are you saying their current mobilization is involuntary?" "In a sense, yes. Individual humans can control their responses, but when their children are threatened, the entire species reacts as if facing extinction. They can't simply choose to ignore the threat. Their evolutionary programming won't allow it." Representative Zex of the peaceful Aquarian species spoke through water-filled translation equipment. "Surely they can be reasoned with. If we explain that the children are safe and being studied for scientific purposes." "With respect," Dr. Wellness interrupted. "From the human perspective, there is no difference between studying their children and torturing them. They see any form of captivity or experimentation as an attack on their species' future." The display updated with new intelligence reports. Human fleets had reached the outer borders of Council space and were establishing defensive positions around every major trade route. Diplomatic communications had ceased. Commercial traffic was being turned away. Administrator Quillen materialized in the chamber through a remote projection system. "The situation remains manageable," he insisted. "These humans are displaying typical emotional responses. Once they realize the futility of challenging Council authority, they will negotiate." "Administrator," Chancellor Vorth said carefully, "current reports suggest they have no intention of negotiating. What is the status of the research subjects?" "The subjects remain in containment for their own safety," Quillen replied. "Release them now would validate this primitive emotional blackmail." Dr. Wellness felt her protective instincts override her usual deference to authority. "Administrator, they're not subjects. They're children. Frightened, traumatized children who have been separated from their families and caged like animals. Your emotional responses are clouding your judgment." Quillen dismissed. The chamber's communication system activated as an incoming transmission arrived. Admiral Torres appeared on the main display, her face showing the kind of calm that preceded extreme violence. "Chancellor Vorth, I'm Admiral Torres of the Human Defense Force. I'm speaking on behalf of the Emergency Coalition, representing 43 human colonies and over 200 million citizens, Chancellor." Vorth inclined his massive head respectfully. "Admiral Torres, the Council is prepared to discuss this situation through normal diplomatic channels." "Chancellor, with respect, normal diplomatic channels would take months." "We don't have months. Those children have been in captivity for 8 days. Every day they remain in those cells causes psychological damage that may be permanent. The children are being well cared for," Administrator Quillen interjected. Admiral Torres turned her attention to him. "Administrator Quillen, I'm looking at surveillance footage that shows children in isolation cells designed for dangerous animals. I see a 16-year-old boy trying to comfort terrified younger children through transparent barriers. I see an 8-year-old girl who has stopped speaking entirely from trauma." "Temporary adjustment difficulties," Quillen replied. "They will adapt." The Admiral's expression changed. Dr. Wellness recognized the look from her studies of human predator behavior. It was the moment when a hunter stopped pretending to be harmless. Administrator, let me explain something about human children, Admiral Torres said. They don't adapt to trauma. They survive it and it changes them forever. Every day you keep them in those cells, you're damaging their ability to trust, to form relationships, to feel safe in the world. She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried absolute certainty. You're not just harming 12 individuals. You're attacking the future of our species, and that is something humanity will not tolerate. The tactical display updated again. More human fleets were arriving at the borders of Council space. Supply lines were being established. Defensive positions were being reinforced. Admiral, Chancellor Vorth asked, what are your intentions? Our intentions are simple, Chancellor. Return our children unharmed and we'll withdraw our fleets and negotiate proper protocols for future interactions between our species. And if we refuse? Administrator Quillen challenged. Admiral Torres looked directly at him through the transmission link. Then you'll learn why every intelligent species in our home galaxy learned to negotiate with humans rather than fight them. You'll discover what happens when you threaten something we'll die to protect. The display showed new data streams. Human settlements throughout the sector were emptying as civilians volunteered for emergency military service. Merchant vessels were being converted to warships. Agricultural colonies were redirecting food production to support military operations. This is impossible, Representative Cloth exclaimed. No species mobilizes their entire civilian population for 12 individuals. You still don't understand, Admiral Torres replied. Those aren't just 12 individuals. There are children, and humans will burn down civilizations to protect our children. Dr. Velness accessed historical databases and found confirmation that terrified her. Human conflicts involving children showed patterns of total warfare that exceeded anything in galactic records. When human young were threatened, the species abandoned all restraint. Chancellor, she said urgently, I recommend immediate release of the children. The humans aren't bluffing. Their entire evolutionary history shows this pattern. When their offspring are endangered, they become the most dangerous species in known space. Impossible, Administrator Quillen insisted. We cannot bow to emotional blackmail from primitives. The communication system activated with a new transmission. This time it came from Captain Chen aboard the New Horizon. Research Station Omega-7, this is Captain Chen. I'm transmitting current fleet positions and mobilization data. You now have 48 hours before the largest human military force in history arrives in your sector. The tactical display filled with red indicators stretching across multiple star systems. Hundreds of thousands of human vessels were converging on Council space. The mobilization was larger than anything in galactic history. Captain Chen, Chancellor Vorth said carefully, surely your leaders understand that this level of response is disproportionate to the situation. Chancellor, you're thinking like a Council species. You see 12 individuals and calculate their value against potential costs. Humans don't think that way about children. We see the future of our species, and will sacrifice everything to protect it. In the containment cells of Research Station Omega-7, Marcus was telling the younger children about the stars outside their cells. He didn't know that fleets were racing across the galaxy to rescue them, or that his suffering had triggered the largest military mobilization in human history. But he knew something was changing. The guards seemed nervous. The researchers were arguing more frequently, and somewhere in his heart he still believed that someone would come for them. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.